My name is Megan Jimenez. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how my life shattered in a single night, only to be rebuilt from ashes I never thought I could rise from. It began at what was supposed to be the happiest celebration of my life, our engagement party. The rented hall downtown glowed with soft golden light, fairy bulbs strung across the ceiling, casting a warm glow over 50 of our closest friends and family. The tables were dressed in white linen roses floating in glass bowls, champagne glasses already half raised in anticipation of endless toasts. It was everything I had ever imagined, modest, intimate, yet meaningful. And in the center of it all was Daniel Carter, my fiancé. He stood tall in his navy suit hair, combed back neatly, smiling that dependable smile that had carried me through some of my darkest days. Beside him was his best man, Mark, the kind of friend Daniel often called brother. They had known each other since high school, a bond forged in scraped knees, wild parties, and late-night phone calls. I believed that night would mark the beginning of forever. Daniel and I had met in college, freshman year, in a crowded lecture hall where his easy grin and terrible handwriting somehow drew me in. He wasn't flashy, but he was steady. While I came from a fractured home where chaos was a daily visitor, he gave me something I had never known before: stability. He dreamed of climbing corporate ladders. I dreamed of building a home filled with warmth. Together we thought we could make it. Fast forward 10 years, and here we were celebrating our engagement. I'd stood by him through layoffs, relocations, family arguments, and sleepless nights. When he struggled, I carried us. When he faltered, I steadied him. When he lost his first real job after a merger, I had held him as he cried on the couch for 3 straight days. I'd even turned down a career opportunity that would have taken me across the country because I couldn't bear to leave him behind. He used to call me his anchor. So why did my anchor suddenly become the weight pulling me under? The night began beautifully enough. Music floated through the room, glasses clinked, my dress swayed as I moved from guest to guest, cheeks hurting from smiling so much. Daniel's parents embraced me warmly, whispering how happy they were to officially welcome me into the family. Mark teased Daniel about finally locking down the best woman in the room. Even Daniel's younger sister Mia, who had always looked at me with a trace of envy, seemed unusually polite. I remember thinking, this is it. We've survived every storm. We deserve this happiness. Then came the speeches. I went first. My voice trembled as I thanked everyone for being there, for supporting us through the years. I looked at Daniel, my heart swelling, and told the crowd how he had changed my life, how his steadiness had given me a kind of peace I once thought impossible. I ended with, to Daniel, my safe harbor in every storm. The applause was warm, reassuring. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stood with such confidence, raising his glass, flashing that boyish smile everyone adored. But there was something else in his tone, a sharpness I couldn't place. To all of you who've supported us, he began, voice steady, and to finding the courage to follow my heart. Life's too short for regrets. Sometimes you have to take risks to get what you really want. The words pricked at me. The crowd clapped politely, but I felt a strange unease, like the floor beneath me had shifted. And then before my mind could process what was happening, he turned, set down his glass, and pulled someone into his arms. Not just anyone. Emily, his ex-girlfriend. Her lips pressed against his in a kiss that was anything but accidental. It wasn't a quick peck or a drunken mistake. It was deliberate, passionate, the kind of kiss you only share when you want to declare something to the world. Gasps echoed through the hall. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, dropping her fork with a clatter. Mark, wide-eyed, looked like someone had punched him in the gut. Even Mia smirked in the corner, as though she had been expecting the drama all along. The room froze. The only sound was the blood rushing in my ears. Daniel didn't pull away immediately. He leaned into it, into her, right there in front of everyone I loved, in front of my family, my friends, our future, our... When they finally broke apart, Emily smirked, dabbing at her lipstick with a napkin, eyes gleaming with something triumphant. She looked at me, and I'll never forget the smug tilt of her chin as she whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. Don't look so shocked, Megan. This didn't come out of nowhere. I wanted to scream, to throw the champagne glass in my hand at the floor until it shattered like my heart. But instead I stood frozen glass trembling in my grip, the weight of betrayal crushing me. My voice barely carried when I managed Daniel. What is this? The microphone was still on. Everyone heard it. He rolled his eyes as though I were being dramatic and said, Megan, you've been so safe. Reliable, sure. But where's the spark Emily gets me? She challenges me. She makes me feel alive. We've been seeing each other for months. Gasps rippled again. The whispers spread like wildfire. I felt my knees weaken, but I steadied myself. His words sliced through me, every syllable unraveling the life I thought we had built together. Emily's laugh cut through the silence, a sharp, entitled sound. Come on, Megan, you can't be surprised. You were always so busy building some boring future. Daniel and I were not afraid to take risks. Her smugness, his betrayal, the pity in everyone's eyes. I set my glass down on the nearest table, carefully, deliberately. My hands were steady, though my heart thundered. I see, I said simply, my voice cold, detached. Then I turned and walked out, my heels clicking against the polished floor, each step echoing in the stunned silence. Behind me, I heard Daniel call Megan. Wait, we can talk about this. But I didn't stop. The night air outside was cool sharp against my flushed skin. I inhaled deeply, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. My engagement ring glinted under the streetlight. For a moment I considered tearing it off and throwing it into the gutter, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked into the darkness, leaving the hall of whispers, the stairs, the shattered image of what I thought was my life. That was the last time I spoke to Daniel that night. And the first moment I realized the man I thought was my safe harbor had sunk the ship himself. I don't remember the drive home. The city lights blurred past the windshield, and all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. It was like the world had narrowed to a tunnel, and I was trapped inside, clutching the steering wheel, as though it were the only thing keeping me upright. When I reached our apartment, my apartment, really since the lease was in my name, I parked outside and just sat in the car for a while, staring at the building. The same windows we had decorated with string lights last Christmas. The same doorway where Daniel had kissed me after a long shift, whispering, "You're my forever, Megan." Forever. The word suddenly felt like a cruel joke. When I finally forced myself inside, the place was too quiet. His shoes by the door, his jacket on the hook, his toothbrush in the bathroom, it all screamed of him, of us. But the us I thought existed had died tonight. I dropped my clutch on the couch and sat down heavily, my hands trembling now that the numbness was wearing off. On the shelf in front of me was the little velvet box that once held my engagement ring. I had kept it after the proposal, a reminder of that perfect beach sunset when he had gone down on one knee, voice shaking, eyes wet with tears. He'd told me I was his anchor, his reason, his everything. I remembered the way the ocean breeze had tousled my hair, the way I had said yes without hesitation, because back then it felt like the safest choice I had ever made. But tonight that memory only mocked me. I curled my fingers around the box, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. How did I miss the signs I whispered into the silence? And then the floodgates opened. Images flashed in my mind, fragments of moments I had dismissed as nothing at the time. The late nights Daniel had spent at the office with Emily, his ex, because they had overlapping projects, the inside jokes between them that I wasn't a part of, the way he'd sometimes leave his phone face down on the table, brushing it off as a habit. I had trusted him so deeply that I hadn't even considered betrayal an option. But trust, it turned out, was just the weapon he used against me. I pulled off the engagement ring, its sparkle now hollow, and placed it gently back into that same velvet box. Then, with a steady hand, I slid it across the shelf until it disappeared behind a stack of books. Out of sight. Maybe someday out of mind. I tried to sleep, but the betrayal replayed in my head like a film on repeat. The look in his eyes when he kissed her. The smug curve of Emily's smile, the gasps, the whispers, the pity. By morning, the numbness had hardened into resolve. I picked up my phone, scrolling through the flurry of messages that had poured in overnight. Friends, cousins, even colleagues who had attended the party. "What the hell happened last night, Megan? Are you okay? Call me. I can't believe Daniel did that." In front of everyone. I ignored them all. I didn't owe anyone explanations, not yet. Instead, I called the wedding planner. Her cheerful voice answered. "Megan, how was the party? Are you ready for the final confirmations?" My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady. "Cancel everything." There was silence on the other end. "Excuse me. The venue, the flowers, the band. Cancel it all. The wedding isn't happening." I could almost hear her blinking in shock. "Megan, are you sure? There are deposits." "Keep the deposits. Consider it your tip." I said, my tone sharper than I intended. Just cancel everything. I hung up before she could respond, sinking back into the couch. A strange sense of relief washed over me. Pain, yes, but also relief. Because whatever Daniel thought he was giving me, it wasn't love, and I wasn't going to chain myself to a man who had humiliated me so publicly, so deliberately. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Daniel's name lit up the screen. I stared at it, my chest tightening, but I didn't answer, not yet. Instead, I walked into our bedroom, pulled out a stack of cardboard boxes, and began methodically packing up his things. Shirts, books, cologne, the watch. I had given him for his last promotion. All of it went into the boxes neat and orderly, like I was erasing him, piece by piece. On the dresser, a framed photo caught my eye. The two of us on that beach trip, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like we had the world at our feet. I picked it up, studied it for a long moment, and then placed it face down in the box. By evening, the apartment looked less like ours and more like mine again. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by silence, and whispered to myself, "He chose her. Let him have her." It wasn't strength yet, not forgiveness, just survival. But it was enough for now. The email confirmation glowed on my laptop screen 1 week at the Caribbean resort. Non-refundable. Check-in Saturday. It had been booked under my name, my credit card. My dream, once wrapped in his promises, now stripped bare. I stared at it for a long time. The easy choice would have been to cancel, swallow the financial loss, and curl up in the wreckage Daniel left behind. But why should I? He had stolen my dignity at that party, stripped me of the future I thought we were building. I wasn't about to let him take the ocean, the sunsets, the quiet paradise too. So I packed a bag, not with the careful deliberation of a bride about to celebrate her honeymoon, but with the resolve of a woman determined to reclaim something, anything that was still hers. The resort greeted me with a wave of warm air, scented with salt and hibiscus. Palm trees swayed against skies so blue they looked unreal. Staff smiled politely when I checked in alone, but I could feel their curiosity. Honeymoons rarely came with one guest. The bungalow was stunning white curtains billowing in the breeze, a balcony that opened to turquoise waters, the rhythmic lull of waves crashing against the shore. It was exactly as I had pictured when Daniel and I planned it together, his eyes lighting up as he promised we'd make memories here that would last a lifetime. The irony stung at first. That first evening, I sat on the balcony, glass of wine in hand, staring at the horizon. Couples walked hand in hand along the beach below, their laughter carried on the wind. I felt the weight of what I had lost pressing down on me, sharp and suffocating. But then slowly something unexpected bloomed inside me. Relief. Because in their laughter, I no longer heard envy. I heard freedom. The next morning, I made myself get up early. No excuses, no wallowing. I brewed coffee, took it to the shore, and let the surf wash over my ankles as the sun climbed higher. The sea was endless, powerful, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small beneath it. I felt infinite. I signed up for activities Daniel would have hated. A hiking tour into the jungle. He would have complained about the heat, the bugs, the sweat. Alone, I pushed through, wiping the sweat from my forehead, grinning, when I reached the hidden waterfall the guide had promised. A snorkeling excursion. Daniel had always said the ocean freaked him out too deep, too unpredictable. I pulled on the mast dove into the water and found myself surrounded by a kaleidoscope of fish darting between coral, the sun-painting ribbons of light across the seabed. For a moment, it felt like I was flying. Back at the resort, I curled up with books I'd put off for years, pages whispering like old friends. I journaled, scribbling down my pain and anger, but also my realizations. That my loyalty had never been the problem. That my steadiness wasn't a flaw. That Daniel's betrayal said more about his emptiness than my worth. On the third night, I stood barefoot in the sand, watching the sky bleed from orange to violet. The waves lapped gently at the shore, cool and insistent. And in that hush of twilight, I finally said it out loud. I'm free. The words startled me at first, but then I said them again, firmer, stronger. I'm free. Not just from Daniel, but from the years I spent convincing myself that love meant sacrifice without limit. From the quiet way I had bent myself to fit into his world, his plans, his moods. From the belief that being steady meant being invisible. Tears pricked at my eyes. But they weren't the same tears I had cried on the drive home from the party. These were lighter, sharper, like the ocean washing me clean. By the end of the week, I didn't want to leave. Not because I wanted to escape my life forever, but because I had found something here I didn't know I was missing myself. When I boarded the plane home, sun-kissed and tired, I wasn't the same woman who had left days earlier with a broken heart stuffed into her suitcase. I was Megan, whole scarred but standing. And for the first time in a long time, hopeful. Coming home from the Caribbean felt like stepping into a different life. The same apartment walls surrounded me, the same streets stretched outside, but I was different. I carried salt in my hair, sun on my skin, and a quiet steadiness I hadn't felt in years. I made a promise to myself: no more putting Daniel at the center of my orbit, no more shrinking myself to fit inside his world. The first step was routine. I rejoined the gym. I had long neglected trading late nights of waiting on Daniel for early mornings of lifting weights, running, sweating out the bitterness. At work, I stopped hiding behind him as my reason for staying in one place and took on projects that challenged me, even if they meant longer hours. My side hustle, the app idea I had shelved because Daniel thought it was too risky, came alive again on my laptop late at night. Each day was a brick. Each brick built something solid, something mine. Meanwhile, whispers of Daniel and Emily's happily ever after began to reach me. At first, it was subtle. A mutual friend mentioned seeing them at a bar laughing too loudly. Her hand on his arm, his eyes glassy from too many drinks. Another friend sighed. They look intense, almost manic. I ignored it, or at least I tried. But then the stories grew darker. Emily's coworker slipped it into conversation one evening over coffee. They had a blow-up in the office kitchen, shouting about who texted whom first. People heard everything. I blinked. At work. Yeah, HR had to step in. It was embarrassing. Daniel, the man who had prided himself on professionalism, unraveling in front of colleagues. Emily always calculating her image, now reckless enough to risk her job. I felt a twinge of something, not joy exactly, but a grim acknowledgement. The house they built on betrayal was crumbling from within. Mutual friends began pulling away from them. Group chats went silent when Daniel posted. Barbecue invites suddenly forgot to include them. It wasn't just about what they had done to me, it was about who they had become together. Toxic, unstable. One friend summed it up bluntly during a late-night call, Megan. They're like fire and gasoline. Sure, it burns hot at first, but eventually it just leaves ashes. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Good, I whispered. Emily's sister Mia, of course, tried to stir the pot. She posted cryptic messages online. True love always wins, paired with a selfie of her and Emily at brunch. Another one a meme about some people can't handle passion, so they call it toxic. I didn't bite, not publicly, not privately. My silence was louder than any clapback could have been. And the more silent I was, the more their chaos seemed to grow. By midsummer, Daniel's performance at work began slipping. His boss had a quiet word with him about missed deadlines. Emily, meanwhile, was put on probation after yet another screaming match with Daniel spilled into the office lobby. Clients had noticed. Her manager wasn't amused. The irony was sharp. I had spent years making sure Daniel never felt the sting of failure, taking on his burdens, softening his landings. Emily, on the other hand, pushed him harder, fed the drama, fueled the fights. The very spark he had chosen over me was now burning him alive. One evening, while folding laundry in the quiet of my apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from a mutual acquaintance. You were right to walk away. They're falling apart. I stared at the message, a small smile tugging at my lips. I didn't reply, because I already knew. My life wasn't perfect. I still had nights where the memory of that party haunted me, where I questioned if I had been blind, if my steadiness really had been boring. But those thoughts never lasted long. I was too busy building, too busy living. Every sunrise run, every late-night coding session, every quiet dinner with friends, it was proof that I didn't need him, that I never had. And as Daniel and Emily's world spiraled into chaos, mine was finally beginning to steady itself again. The first sign came through email. I was at work reviewing contracts when a subject line popped into my inbox. We need to talk, from Emily. I froze. My finger hovered over the trackpad, my chest tightening. I hadn't heard from her since that night at the party, unless you counted her sister's passive-aggressive posts. Curiosity won. I clicked. Her words spilled across the screen in a frantic rush. Megan, I know you hate me, but please hear me out. Daniel isn't who I thought he was. He's controlling, jealous, paranoid. He accuses me of cheating all the time when he's the one sneaking around. I lost my job last week because of all the stress. I made a huge mistake. You're the only person who really knows me. Please, can we meet? I need to fix this. I need you. I stared at the email, my pulse steady, my face expressionless. Delete. 2 days later, my phone buzzed during a meeting. A new number. I ignored it. Afterward, I checked the voicemail. Her voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. Megan, it's me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, I miss what we had. Daniel was a rebound, a stupid fling. You were always the better person. Don't let one mistake erase everything. Call me back, please. I deleted it too, but she didn't stop. The text came next. Remember when we laughed about how you kept Daniel sane during his layoff? You were always the strong one. Another, come on, don't be cold. Everyone makes mistakes. We can grab coffee and start over. Start over, I nearly laughed. The audacity of it, the way she twisted betrayal into a plea for comfort, was almost impressive. And then one evening, she crossed the line. I was in my kitchen, stirring pasta on the stove, when a loud knock rattled the door. My stomach dropped as I peeked through the peephole. Emily. Her hair was disheveled. Mascara-streaked clothes, rumpled like she had slept in them for days. She clutched her phone in one hand, the other pounding on the door. Megan, please open up. We need to fix this. I unlatched the chain, but kept the door mostly closed, my body blocking the entrance. What do you want? My voice was flat, controlled. Her eyes filled instantly, tears spilling down her cheeks. Us. I want us back. Daniel was a mistake, a disaster. You were the steady one, the real one. I was blinded by his charm, but he turned out to be poison. Please, give me another chance. I'll make it right. Her desperation clung to the air like smoke. I crossed my arms. You followed your heart, remember? You said life was too short for regrets. You made your choice in front of 50 people. Her face twisted, shame morphing into defensiveness. Don't throw that in my face. I was emotional that night. He manipulated me. You're better than him. You always were. You're right, I said quietly. I am better than him, and better than this. Her lips parted, trembling. Megan, please don't do this. I don't have anywhere else to go. I see it now. Stability? You were what I needed all along. The hypocrisy stung, but not in the way it once would have. This time it almost amused me. The same stability she once mocked was suddenly her lifeline. I shook my head. No, Emily. You saw me as boring, predictable, disposable. Now you see me as a safety net. I won't be either for you. And with that, I shut the door. Her hands pounded the wood, muffled sobs spilling into the hallway. Megan, please. This isn't fair. But I didn't answer. I stood in my quiet apartment, heart steady, listening as her cries faded into silence. For the first time since the engagement party, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The pounding on my door that night eventually stopped, but the storm didn't end there. Emily wasn't done, not by a long shot. The next morning, my office phone rang. I frowned at the unfamiliar number, half expecting a client. Hello. A sharp inhale. Megan. It's Karen, Emily's mother. I stiffened. How did you get this number? I don't think that matters. She snapped her tone, a blend of irritation and fake concern. Emily's a wreck because of you. She told me everything. You can't just ghost her after all those years of friendship. Be a decent woman and forgive her. Everyone makes mistakes. Her words slithered through the receiver, dripping with entitlement. I swallowed the sharp retort that rose to my lips and answered evenly. Karen, this isn't your business. Goodbye. Before she could sputter another word, I hung up. My hands shook, not from doubt, but from the nerve it took to finally cut through their manipulations. That night, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mia, Emily's younger sister. The text was blunt, venomous. Hey, witch. Emily's crying nonstop. You think you're so superior walking away? Daniel was a jerk, fine, but you're worse for ignoring her. Family sticks together. Call her back or you're trash. I blocked the number without hesitation. But the gall of it all lingered. The way they twisted betrayal into victimhood. The way they insisted I owed Emily something after she'd shattered my life. I owed her nothing. Days later, Daniel finally reached out. His name lit up my phone in the middle of a Sunday grocery run. Against my better judgment, I answered curiosity, outweighing caution. Daniel, I said flatly. A long pause, then his voice low and strained. Megan, I messed up. I know that now. I clenched the phone tighter, staring at the row of canned soups in front of me. You don't say. I thought Emily was what I needed. She made me feel alive, you know. But it was all chaos. We fought constantly. She ruined everything, and I let her. His voice cracked the weight of his regret leaking through. Megan, I miss us. I miss you. Please, can we just talk? I let his words hang in the air, listening to the desperation he once accused me of lacking. The irony was bitter, almost satisfying. Finally, I answered, calm and precise. You didn't just mess up, Daniel. You humiliated me. You destroyed everything in front of everyone. There's no going back from that. He tried again, softer this time. We could rebuild. Start over. I'd do anything. No, my voice was ice. You chose her. Live with it. And I hung up. For the next week, my phone became a battlefield. Private numbers, voicemails, half-hearted apologies, teary pleas, then angry demands when I didn't respond. Emily, Daniel, Karen, Mia, they all tried their angles, guilt, nostalgia, entitlement. But I had learned something vital. Silence was my shield. The more I ignored them, the more frantic they became. One night I journaled it out. The pen scratching across the page. They're not reaching out because they love me. They're reaching out because they've lost control, and they can't stand that I'm free. I closed the journal with a decisive snap. For the first time in months, I felt untouchable. A year can change everything. 12 months ago, I was a woman humiliated at her own engagement party, clutching a glass while watching her fiancé kiss his ex. Today I wake up before dawn, lace my shoes, and run through quiet city streets with lungs that feel strong, alive, unbroken. My life is no longer defined by what Daniel or Emily took from me. It's defined by what I've built without them. The app I'd once dismissed as too risky became my obsession. At first it was just evenings after work code scribbled between half-eaten dinners and empty mugs of tea. But momentum has a way of feeding itself. By spring, I had a small team helping me polish features. By summer, we had our first paying clients. By autumn, I quit my corporate job entirely. Now, the project that Daniel once mocked as a hobby pays my bills and more. I work from a corner office in a shared downtown space, sunlight streaming across whiteboards, scribbled with plans for the future. I'm no longer someone's support system. I'm my own foundation. And it's not just work. The gym sessions stuck. I can deadlift more than I ever thought possible, and when I catch my reflection in the mirror, I don't just see muscle, I see resilience. Friends joke that I glow differently now. Maybe they're right. I started hosting dinners again, inviting friends I'd neglected during the years I spent bending my schedule around Daniel's moods. My apartment became filled with laughter, spilled wine off-key singing. The silence that once haunted me has been replaced with joy I created myself. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinners, coffees, long walks. Men who look at me with admiration, not entitlement. Who see my strength as something to respect, not diminish. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not desperate for someone else's approval. I don't need to be chosen, because I already chose myself. There was one moment that crystallized this shift. I had just signed the lease on a new apartment high above the city with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline in golden evening light. Boxes were scattered everywhere, but I stood in the center of the living room with nothing but a glass of water in my hand, staring at the view. This place was mine, paid for with my work, my choices, my freedom. I whispered it to the glass, to the walls, to the stars just starting to blink awake outside. I chose myself, and it saved me. The words echoed through the empty space, steady and true. Sometimes late at night, memories of the past creep in, the sting of Emily's smug smile, Daniel's dismissive words, the gasps of the crowd. But instead of slicing me open, they remind me of how far I've come. They're no longer wounds, they're scars. Proof that I survived. Proof that I thrived. People often ask if I regret walking away so silently, if I wish I'd screamed, thrown the ring, made a scene. But I don't. The silence was louder, more powerful, because it gave me space to rebuild without their voices in my head. And in that silence, I found myself again. It had been more than a year since I last saw her. By then, Emily had become little more than a ghost, a name whispered occasionally by friends, a face I'd scroll past on social media without stopping. She no longer occupied my mind. Until the day I walked into a coffee shop downtown. I was on my way to a client meeting, laptop bag over my shoulder, hair tied neatly back. I ordered a latte, pulled out my notebook, and waited for my name to be called. The place buzzed with quiet conversation, the clink of cups, the hiss of steaming milk. And then I felt it, the sharp jolt of recognition. Emily. She stood by the door, clutching a worn handbag, her eyes scanning the room. When her gaze landed on me, she froze. For a split second, I saw it, the shock, the hesitation, the flicker of shame. Then she forced a smile and approached. "Megan," she said, voice thin, a little shaky. Wow. Small world. I lifted my latte from the counter, meeting her eyes with calm detachment. Emily. She looked different. The flawless polish she once wore like armor was gone. Her hair was dull. Her clothes rumpled her face, marked with fatigue. If not for the faint trace of her old arrogance hiding in her posture, I might not have recognized her. Can I sit, just for a minute? She asked, already pulling out the chair across from me. I gestured faintly. Go ahead. She fidgeted with her cup nails tapping nervously against the cardboard sleeve. I wanted to apologize. For everything. The party, Daniel, all of it. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I sipped my latte, saying nothing. Her words tumbled faster, desperate. We crashed and burned like you probably heard. He was jealous, controlling. It was toxic. I lost friends, jobs, everything. I've been in therapy. I'm trying to change. But seeing you now thriving, it hurts. Because I realize what I threw away. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. Can we try again? Even as friends, I miss you. The old me might have wavered. The old me might have softened, offered comfort. But that version of me had been buried a long time ago. I set my cup down carefully, apology noted. Her face brightened with a flicker of hope until I continued. But let's be clear, Emily. You said life was too short for regrets, that you needed passion, not stability. You followed your heart with my fiancé in front of everyone I loved. Now you're here because it backfired. She winced, her bravado crumbling. Don't twist my words. I was wrong, okay? You've changed. You're stronger now, successful. We could be that power couple we always dreamed of. I leaned back, studying her. See, that's the thing. You used to think my steadiness was a flaw. Now you want it because you've lost your own footing. But I don't need to be your stability. I already built mine. Her face crumpled, anger flashing. So that's it. You're just going to rub it in, after everything we had. No rubbing, I replied firmly. Just facts. You've become irrelevant to my life. I've built something better without you. Peace. Growth. A future on my terms. I stood slinging my bag over my shoulder, leaving her at the table with her half-empty cup. You're a closed chapter, Emily. Take care of yourself. Her voice followed me, sharp and desperate. Megan, wait. But I didn't look back. I stepped into the crisp air, the city humming around me, and for the first time, I felt the weight lift completely. Closure wasn't something she could give me. It was something I had already given myself. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's simple. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation or even